So it's not lost on me that podcasting is one of those additions to most of your business agendas, right? There's not a ton of you that are coming to this show and listening, and you're like, I just have a podcast and that's it. You're trying to grow a show and just have that as your main means of creating sponsorship revenue or doing what like you have pieces of your business or pieces of your puzzle, and podcasting is just one of those. So today, I wanted to share specific podcast tips for every level. Whether you're just getting started and you're like, I'm launching a podcast in 2025, this is the thing that I'm doing, or you are more seasoned because the more conversations I've had with this audience, it's almost a 50-50 split of exactly people that have been listening to the show for a while and you're trying to get your ducks in a row to get started and launch your podcast. And then those of you that have been with us for several years, and I'm so grateful to both camps of people that are listening to the show because it's so special. So right from the top, I just want to give you a thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It means the world to me, and it's why I keep showing up. But I wanted to go through some tips for beginners. We're going to kind of split it into part 1 and part 2. We're going to do tips for beginners and then tips for seasoned podcasters on how you can make a bigger impact with your podcast in 2025. So let's get right to it. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Profit Podcast. This is going to be so much fun today because as a podcast coach and content strategist, I love talking to the different spectrum of, or I guess across the spectrum of creators that we have here in this audience. So like I said in the intro, we have beginners and then we have the seasoned pros that have been doing this for a while, and you're trying to figure out what is that next step. And I'm going to give a quick shout out to our Podcasters Connect community. So this is our membership where you can go to crystalprofit.com/join. You can join as a free member. You can join as a premium member. But basically what we're doing a lot in that community is we're getting in conversation about what you're trying to accomplish this year. Not in 5 years, not in, when you hit the $1 million mark in your business or you have 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're talking about what are we doing today? What are we doing today to reach your goals? So if you've been looking for a place that can help you with accountability, come check us out. But I've been in a lot of conversations about people that are launching this year. And so that's why I wanted to break this up into beginners or part 1. This is what we're going to focus on. And then the second half, we're going to talk about seasoned podcasters and what you can do. So let's start with the beginners. So we're going to break this into 3 sections or segments. And what I want to focus on, if you are a Profit Podcasting student, this is my digital course. Some of these are going to sound familiar because these are modules. These are lessons inside our program. And I wanted to pull out these 3 topics specifically because they're going to be the ones that move the needle the most. So if you've been trying to you're spinning your wheels, and I'm hearing this a lot. Y'all are reaching out to me saying, there's so many things to do, or I'm too tied up in my business. I can't make time for my podcast, or I just don't know where to start. If you're raising your hand right now, you are not alone. I hear this all the time in my DMs of people saying these exact things. So the first thing that you need to do, and this could be one of those exercises where you go and journal for a little bit, or, take out your phone and do some voice memos to yourself, or just record a podcast episode about this. I don't care, but I want you to do some deep work on knowing your goals and knowing your why. Why are you doing this, right? So I guess it's in the reverse order. I want you to know your why and then set some goals for your podcast. And what this means is, why are you doing this? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to show up and create a podcast? And some people will say, well, that doesn't matter, Crystal. Yes, it actually does. And the reason why I can say that it does, as someone who's created over 1,400 episodes. Actually, I think we're getting closer to that 1,500 mark from all the shows I've recorded. I can tell you your why matters. It actually matters a lot because on those days where you really don't feel like showing up, your why is what's going to help you like keep going. It's what's going to help you show up anyway and record that episode because you're going to remember, oh yeah, it's bigger than me. It's bigger than me just showing up. The why, whatever it is, you want to, create $1 million business. Awesome. Maybe that is your why. Or you want to reach people with the important message that you have. Maybe that's your why. Or maybe it's, I just want to do something where I can talk into a microphone and I can just share my thoughts and feelings. Like whatever your why is, you need to come up with that. And then I want you to be practical about what you're going to do with your goals. And what I mean by that is for those of you that are just getting started, your practical goal could mean I'm going to publish this thing and show up for 30 days. 30 days. What does that look like? Maybe that means you publish 4 episodes in a month's period. Maybe that's what your 30-day goal could look like. Or maybe that means picking your podcast artwork and putting it out there and recording a trailer, and you're going to do that in your first 30 days. I don't know. Like and we have so many previous podcast episodes and YouTube videos about goals and how to set goals. I'm not going to go deep on that today, but you need goals. You need goals. So define your why and set some goals for your podcast. And then the next piece is choosing a topic and format that really makes sense for you. And what I mean by that is the topic needs to be niche enough that you have a very specific audience, but broad enough that you can still appeal to a decent sized community. Now, what do I mean by, what's niche and broad? I actually have this cool graphic that shows like how you overlap the two and where your sweet spot is between being broad enough to reach a decent sized audience and niche enough to be specific. It's like a Venn diagram where you can see like, oh, that's the sweet spot of the content that you should be creating. And I think that people overthink this. They really do, because you're just like, what if I get it wrong? What if I get it wrong? What if I choose the wrong topic? What if I choose the wrong niche? Guess what? You can update it in the future. I speak as someone who has rebranded a podcast, who has changed the topic of my podcast actually multiple times, though some of those weren't like big enough changes for the larger audience to even notice. Those of you that have been around here for a while, like you noticed and you took stock. I know you're like, oh, I'm well aware when Crystal tried to do that one thing and it didn't work out. But yeah, choosing a topic and a format that works for you. So if you're someone that's super overwhelmed with interviewing others, or you're nervous about asking people to come on, you're like, I don't know, maybe solo content is the way that you start. I'm going to keep bringing it back to our Podcasters Connect community because those are the people that I'm in conversation with. We just had our January group coaching call when I'm recording this, and we're talking to people that are doing solo only and now they want to start doing interviews, or they started with interviews and now they want to add in solo content to keep their cadence of consistency up, but they can change it at any time. I've said this once, I will say it again until I'm blue in the face. You make the rules for your content, right? I can tell you all day, every day what I do for my show, but it's not the rules of your show. What I'm giving you, these are guidelines. These are all guidelines. But at the end of the day, you're the one that makes the rules. You're the one that sticks to the things that you can commit to in your content. So choose a topic, choose a format, and remember, you can always go back and change it. If one day you wake up and say, I don't want to do 60-minute interviews anymore. What if I just did 25? Beautiful. Change it. Change the format. Change something to where you can keep showing up consistently. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox about your format and your topic. You can always change it and update it in the future. The third piece of this is planning your first episode. Okay, we're all going to take a deep breath together. Planning your first episode will probably be the most stressful episode that you ever plan. Because it's the pulling off the Band-Aid, right? It's the thing that we don't want to do. It's eating the frog. It's doing the hardest thing first of your day. Like whatever analogies you want to use, it's probably the hardest. And I love this again because we were in a coaching call and I had 2 or 3 members that were on the call say, "Oh yeah, I recorded and deleted my first episode like 4 times." I think somebody even said more than that. I think I said, "Oh yeah, I think I did it like 20 times." And this is one of my tricks is if you're going to record your very first episode, record it, listen back. If it's awful, delete it. Yeah, it's such a simple secret, but it's my secret to success is if something's terrible, I just delete it and I keep moving. And by the 20th time that I've recorded something and I'm like, oh, yeah, you know what? I don't hate this. It's not necessarily that I love it. I don't think I ever got to the point where I loved my very first episode. I just got to the point where I didn't hate it and I could hit publish and I felt good about hitting publish. I was like, okay, I know it's not perfect and it's not great, but it's better than not putting it out there. So don't let perfectionism stay in the way or stand in the way of you recording that very first episode. Rip off the Band-Aid, eat the frog, like do the hard thing and record that first episode because guess what? That second episode will be a little bit easier than the first one. And that third one will be a little bit easier than the second one. Like, you see where I'm going? Your 500th, and we're actually getting really close on this podcast to recording our 500th episode. It's a lot easier than the very first episode. So this is all you beginners like coming out there, rip off that Band-Aid and just record that very first episode. And I would love to know if you're watching on YouTube, like share in the comments, like tell me what was your experience recording your very first episode. I would love to hear from you. If you have a link to it, awesome. Most people are like, Crystal, of all the episodes that I would want to share, it would not be my first one. I'm going to link to my very first episode. I don't think I've done this in a while. We're going to link to episode 1. And I got like a frog in my throat just saying that because, oh my gosh, you're going to go for a ride. You're going to go for a ride when you listen to it. But I'm putting myself out there and saying, look, this is how I started and this is where we are today. And it's all because we got started and we kept going. All right. So those are my tips for beginners on how to get started and rip off the Band-Aid. So just to recap, know your goals know your why and set your goals. The second one is choosing your topic and format and remembering you can always update this and change it in the future. And then the third piece is planning your first episode, getting it recorded and getting it out there, launching your show. All right. Part 2. All right, here we are. Part 2, tips for seasoned podcasters. Okay. Are we ready? Are we ready? Seasoned pros, I'm coming to you now. All right. And if you're just beginning, take all of this in and kind of store it in the back of your memory as tips that you can use as you get going on your journey. The first one is leveling up your production and workflow. So if you've been podcasting for, we'll say 6 to 12 months, right? I think 12 months is probably more of the sweet spot of when I would start calling you a seasoned podcaster because 52 episodes in a year's time, like, you know what you're doing, right? You're not feeling all the like, oh my gosh, I have to record. Maybe you're getting nervous about getting bigger guests. That's a different mind shift, but you're not nervous just recording every single time. You have a little bit more confidence and you feel just a little bit better about yourself whenever you're showing up. Well, now it's time to look at your production and workflow and see where can you make this better. This could mean upgrading your equipment if you have the budget to do so. Maybe if you've only done audio, maybe you could start doing video now. Or if you have never posted any short form content, maybe you could add that into the mix. It could also look like, again, we talked about switching up the format. If you've only ever done interviews, could you throw in some solo content? If you've only ever done solo, could you throw in some interviews? I'm pushing you out of your comfort zone because this is what I'm supposed to do as a coach. I'm supposed to keep making you think about ways that you can have a bigger impact or make deeper connections with your audience. This is my job. My job is to push you out of your comfort zone so that you don't get complacent and quit. Because this is what I see a lot of the time. is people get stuck in this mindset of like, well, my show's not growing, well, my show's not doing this. And they're like, I'm still recording on this really basic platform, or that I'm doing this thing. I'm doing things the way that I've always done them and I'm still not growing. And I'm like, well, I'll be the catalyst to shove you out and say, look, we're going to jump off the cliff. I'm going to pull your parachute and we're going to see if you can fly because it's time. It's time. So this is where we are today. So upgrading your equipment. Another one is streamlining your processes with better organization and workflow. Now, if you've never sat down and looked at where you can make your workflows better, again, this is your time to journal. This is your time to go look at your processes. If you don't have a process, like ding, 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 this is your alarm bells to write down a process. Y'all, I talk so much about SOPs. I wrote a newsletter recently that was all about how nerdy I am with a SOP. So that's a standard operating procedure. And what that means is in our business at Profit Media, we write down everything that we do. We write it down. I have my assistant who helps me track everything, where we look and see, okay, this is how it works for recording a podcast episode, uploading it to YouTube, how we do all the things in the back end of our business, how we do tracking for affiliate launches. Like we write everything down because then we don't have to remember it. Then it's like one less thing that I have to keep in my brain power. My brain power is focused on the content that I'm creating, not how it goes and how it flows. And if you want examples of tools that I use Asana to help me with my production workflows. It's how I track like which episodes that I'm creating, which one I need to record. Then I also use tools like Google Sheets, Google Docs. I create most of my SOPs in Google Docs, and then it's just like a format and I'll copy it. I actually love the drawing tool where I can go in and I just draw the workflow out and then it's there in the Google Doc. You could also use a tool like Canva. Canva is fantastic because you can whiteboard, you can do workflows. They have templates in there. Like, I mean, it's just so fantastic if you haven't looked at any of these, but it's time to level up, y'all. If you've been doing this for a while, you don't have any of this documented within your content workflows, it's time. It's time to sit down and make it happen. Maybe it's just time to sit down and do a digital detox, like a digital declutter of like all of your junk, right? We have spring cleaning for our houses. I think that we should for our digital life as well. I do this at the end of the year in Asana. I went and I archived everything that I didn't need, all my baggage, if you will, that I didn't want to carry into 2025. I do the same thing in my Google Drive. I'll go and I'll clean it up and be like, oh, I was lazy and I just saved files all over the place. I'm like, no, it's time to straighten up a little bit, make it all nice and pretty. That way, if someone comes in to visit, if my video editor needs to see a folder, then I'm like, oh, let me clean this up real fast. I'm like, oh, I don't want him to see how much of a mess it is. Like, I do this on purpose because the production and workflow matters because it means I'm a professional. That's really what it comes down to. I'm not just willy-nilly doing this as a hobby. Like I am showing up as a professional, like someone is paying me to be this organized because it matters. Because it matters. Because when you start taking yourself more seriously, others will take you more seriously whenever you're creating your content. So again, another soapbox. Another soapbox I got on today. I'm stepping down because production and workflows, this is one that like I said, I love SOPs. Maybe we just need to do a whole episode on SOPs, but that's for another day. Now we're going to talk about engaging your audience on a deeper level. If you've been podcasting for a while and you have not done a survey, I have been preaching this for years. If you haven't done a survey, either through a Google form, SurveyMonkey, a Typeform, a Jotform. I feel like there's so many options now that you can survey your audience, or just doing an Instagram poll, or just sending an email to your list. Kit has this really cool feature that's built into the platform where you can do polls right inside your email. So if you're a Kit user, then you can do polls in your email list and then go look at the results. Super cool feature that I love about the platform. But we're not sponsored by Kit today, but I just, I have the Kit hat on if you're watching on YouTube. My hair was a mess. I was like, I'm going to throw my hair up in my Kit hat today for today's video. They're not a sponsor, but Kit, if you want to come back and sponsor the show, then we're all about it. But the other piece of this is just having results, having data metrics from your audience that gives you actual information. By the time I'm recording this, like we are just wrapping up our annual audience survey. So it's a 2025 annual audience survey. And what I did is I created a simple Google form. And in that, it was just a few questions. Like I wanted to make sure it was quick, it was actionable. And then when someone took it, they got a digital download of my book, Start a Binge Worthy Podcast. Like I wanted it to be incentivized, right? Like I'm going to ask people for their time. I'm going to give them something in return. And actually, I'm in the process of setting up a bunch of calls where I'm going to talk to people. I was going to say face to face, but face to Zoom, right? We're going to talk on Zoom and we're going to chat through a little bit more because I want to get to know who my audience is. And of course, again, I'm going to pay them for it. I'm going to give them a $25 Amazon gift card to talk to them on a deeper level. And if you're like, well, Crystal, I don't have the money to invest in that right now. The amount of time that I invest with my audience shows up in the revenue that I make every year. So all the years that I put off surveying my audience or doing surveys that were like on a deeper level or thinking, oh, I don't need to do that. I just know my audience. I know my people. I am shocked every single time I survey my audience because the people that I think that I know, that's like all these ideas in my head because I think that my audience is just like me, y'all are not just like me. And that's so beautiful. I love that we are different. I love that our goals are completely different. Like it is so across the board. Just everybody wants to accomplish this or they want to do that or they want that. Like it shocks me to my core every time. And that is why the audience surveys, the audience feedback is so important because you need to know your audience. You need to be in conversation with your people. So whether that's through Facebook, Instagram, a Facebook group, a community on Mighty Networks, that's where our platform lives for Podcasters Connect. It's hosted on Mighty Networks. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to crystalprofit.com/Mighty Networks, and you're going to learn all about this community of what I'm trying to build. Like this is where we're trying to build things. So I know, again, I'm getting on a soapbox, but the deeper level piece of knowing your audience is so important. And that could be the missing link to so many of you seasoned podcasters that are struggling. You're struggling with burnout. You're struggling trying to figure out your next move. You're wondering, should I keep going? Am I doing the right thing? When was the last time you surveyed your audience? We're going to link to some more resources because I've actually walked through what it looks like to survey your audience, and I want you to check that out. So if this is really speaking to you, go do that and make that part of your goals for this quarter. Like, don't put it off. Don't put it off. Whatever quarter you're in right now, use ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to survey my audience. Give me 5 questions that I can ask them. Tell me the workflow. Like, it's what I did. It's what I did for my audience survey. So if you want to see behind the scenes, I said, what kind of incentives should I do? And how am I going to set up the process to do everything? I use ChatGPT to do it. So you don't really have any more excuses on sending out an audience survey, and you can find something to do to incentivize them, whether it's a free download of something, a free resource, whatever that looks like, but get creative and create an audience survey today. All right, last one we're going to cover for seasoned podcasters is marketing and expanding your reach. So I thought about talking about monetization, but it's such a big topic that I wanted to, and I feel like it lands under the marketing umbrella. But we need full episodes dedicated to monetization, and those are coming. Don't worry, we're coming with monetization tips all day, every day, and we are coming for you. But I wanted to talk about marketing specifically because this is something that I think needs to be revisited every single quarter. If you're like, Crystal, that sounds like a lot. It sounds like a lot. It's not if you just think about looking at your content from a different perspective every 90 days. What do I mean by that? Look at your podcast artwork. Does it look good? Like, do you still love your podcast artwork? Does it need to be updated? This is how I felt last year when I was planning a content photo shoot with my fabulous photographer, Camille. I'm really excited because when I'm recording this, I'm doing a photo shoot with her this Friday, and I cannot wait. I'll share the behind the scenes. I'll share all the things. I cannot wait to share the pictures that we're going to get because last year, before we did the photo shoot, I was like, I really need updated podcast artwork. And that was the main reason for the photo shoot. I was like, it's just been too long. It's been the same content for too long. It needs a refresh. It needs like a slight rebrand. And I went through a period where I thought I was going to change the name of my show. I thought I was going to change a lot more about it. I was like, no, it just needed a little zhuzhing up. It needed like, let's hang a different, piece of art on here and call it a day. And that's what we did. And I love it right now. So do I want to rebrand the podcast today? Nope. I'm happy with it because I checked in with myself every 90 days and I'm like, I love the content that's on there. Now for my YouTube channel, I want to update the cover art that's on there. And I thought about doing it before. I was like, oh, we need to do that. And then I was like, no, we're about to do a photo shoot. So I'm going to update the YouTube like background, like all of that's getting a makeover. It hasn't been touched in several years. So we're going to be doing that. Then I look at my website. I did a full overhaul of my website last year. A lot of things got to overhaul whenever I did my last photo shoot with Camille. But I switched to a different platform for my website. I use Showit with a Tonic template. If you have no idea what any of these words mean, don't worry. I'm going to link to them here. I'm an affiliate for all of these projects or products that I'm using. But yeah, I was like, I want to do a refresh. And it needed it so much. Maybe I'll have Jay, my video editor, put up like a before and after of my website, like before I had Showit and then after I had Showit. And it's a huge difference. It's a big difference. So that's what I needed to up my game in 2024. I needed to do a refresh of my podcast artwork. I needed to do a refresh for my entire website. And then there's other pieces that I'm constantly listening to. The podcast is probably going to get some new like intro music or like the main segment that I use in the beginning. That's going to get updated this year. Is it going to get updated today? Like right now? No, because it's not the thing that I'm focusing on right at this moment, but it's on my roadmap. So if you've ever heard of the word roadmap and you've been like, I hear people talk about that in the tech circles or when it comes to apps, what it means is you just take all the things you want to do in your brand, in your business, and then you just do them in priority level. So what's the thing that's going to make the biggest impact for your brand this year? Again, I can't tell you what that's going to be. You know what that is. But if you need some ideas, if I were overhauling all the pieces of my brand, right? My website, my podcast, my YouTube channel, my email list, my social media, how would I prioritize that? I would prioritize that by the one that I show up to most and where my audience already has the biggest reach. So if my Instagram has like 30 people, that's not going to be the one that I'm going to focus on the most right now. But if my podcast is getting 10,000 downloads every single month, well, then maybe that's the one that I'm going to look at that one first. And I'm going to see, again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to I'm going to survey my audience and see, hey, like, what are our thoughts about everything? And then just kind of get into more detail and then go through and prioritize and then slot an update, let's say once a quarter until you get all of them tackled. You tackle all of them, or maybe once every 30 days, right? If you have help or you have the ability to really meet a tighter deadline. But at the end of the day, I just want you thinking about how can you do a better job at marketing this year? That's more of marketing and branding. And then how can you expand your reach? So how can you get on more podcasts? How can you focus on SEO? Or maybe how can you get in front of somebody else's email list, right? Maybe you could sponsor some newsletters and get more subscribers onto your email list and see how that works. But if you are just kind of chugging along, doing the same thing week after week after week, and you haven't changed anything since you started, consider changing some stuff. Again, this is me pushing you out of your comfort zone because that's what I'm supposed to do. As your coach, I am supposed to push you out of your comfort zone. So let's do a quick recap. All right. For my beginners, I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that you are in a space where you can really find the tools and resources that you need to create content with confidence. But join us over at Podcasters Connect. Again, go to crystalprofit.com/join, and we'd love to see you there. I would love for you to get started with some clarity, some simplicity, and consistency around your content. And then we can get to the point of being the seasoned podcasters so you can focus on growth, refinement, and audience engagement in bigger ways in 2025 or into 2026. But calls to action, launch your podcast. Starters, beginners, launch your podcast. Pick a date. I don't care when it is. I don't care if it's October 2025. Launch your podcast. When are you going to launch this thing? I ask people this all the time and they're like, Crystal, you're putting me on the spot. Again, that's my job. When are you going to launch your podcast? I'm asking you. I want you to write it down, put it on a sticky note, put it like tape it to your computer, put it on your door. I don't care. Put it on your mirror, put it wherever you have to put it, but launch your podcast this year. And then for my seasoned podcasters, my seasoned pros, I want you to share whatever tips or challenges that you are having in the comments because I want to help you level up. So if you're watching on YouTube, type them in the chat. What are you struggling with? What do you want to see more content created around here about? This is the perfect place. If you want to get a shout out in a future episode, we have a really cool episode coming up from Kathy. So Kathy from the Caregiver Cup podcast, she had a fantastic question around why did we move everything over to Mighty Networks? This is going to be a good deep dive for anybody that's like, I don't know what platform to be on for my business and everything. Like this is going to be a fantastic one. But she reached out to me and asked me these questions. I was like, Kathy, I want to create a podcast episode about this. And she was like, awesome. Like, let's make it happen. But reach out to your people, talk to your people, get in conversation with your audience. If you have not been doing this, should be your biggest takeaway. So check the resources in the description so that you can figure out how you're going to do that this year and what that looks like. But no matter where you are in your podcasting journey, there's always room to grow and inspire others. And I want that to be the motivation that you take away from today's episode. But before we sign off officially, we have a fan mail shout out. So Amy, like we're just having like a full blown conversation, but at this point between having your shout outs on the podcast and you texting me via fan mail. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, a fan mail shout out, you can actually text me. If you're listening on the audio only version, there's a button at the top of this episode where it says send Crystal a text message and you can text me and I can see it and I will read it. On these episodes, I will give your podcast a shout out, your content a shout out. So Amy Connell she has the Grace Health podcast for Christian women over 40. And you need to go check it out. Amy's a longtime fan of the show. She's here in the Houston area and I've got to meet her in person several times. And she is such a joy, but this is what she said. So if you missed the last fan mail shout out she asked me if I had gotten a new chair. No, Mama hadn't gotten a new chair yet. And as we talk, my chair is just going down. Like, this is so sad. It's ridiculous. And I always tell, there we go. My video editor, he's like, do you really want to leave that in? Like when your chair is a piece of garbage and you're going down. I'm like, yes, because we like to keep it real around here. So if you're listening to this and you want to see how ridiculous it is, like you can see when I'm like actively going down, I need to get a chair. But she asked, okay, this is what she said. Hey, thanks for the shout out. Bummer you didn't get a new chair. Sounds like a reward to give yourself when you reach a certain goal. It really is. Amy, I don't even really have a good excuse because the chairs really aren't that expensive. I just need to get one. And I told my husband last time he went to Costco, I was like, can you just get me like a gaming chair? Just give me something. And then I still haven't made it happen. So back to priorities. I complain about it in every single episode. So you would think it's a priority. But I haven't made it happen. Maybe I'll hop on Amazon and order one right after this, but I have not made it happen. We do have a big milestone coming up. I kind of mentioned it earlier. We have our 500th episode coming up in March, and we're going to do a huge giveaway. And I'm so excited. So stay tuned for that. But I'm getting a new chair before March. I looked at the timeline. I'm like, I'm not waiting until March. We're gonna get Mama a new chair before that happens. But that's all I have for you today. So if this is your first time tuning in, what a fun episode to join us. Make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening and watching. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.